Good evening and welcome to Cohoes City School District Board of Education meeting tonight, January 22nd. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 6:03 p.m. Please note our emergency exits. There's two on the side and the one that you came in, and we would meet out front. Could we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
We have a roll call, please.
Mrs. Geller,
I'm here.
Mrs. Snyder,
Yes.
Mrs. Gendron. Here. Mr. Droz,
Here.
Mr. Jackson.
Here.
And Mrs. Paradis is excused.
Excuse. Oh,
At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Superintendent O'Shea for our district reports.
Thank you. Well, good evening, everyone. We always love having students give reports at our board meeting. And tonight we have some high school students. I am going to turn this over to Assistant Principal Heather Brott to introduce them.
Hi, everybody. Heather Brott, Assistant Principal of the high school. We have four of our lovely students here to report about things that are going on in the high school this year. And they really opened up the conversation to them and said, the board loves to hear from kids. What do you guys think that we should talk about? And Mr. Chardon and Mr. Flannery are in the building, so be careful what you guys say, okay? So I'll start with Haley. You guys can introduce yourself and then we'll turn it over to you.
My name is Haley. I'm
I'm Tyler Rogers. I'm sorry.
I'm Levi Williams.
All right, Tyler, take it away.
All right. So one of my points was the coaching staff at CHS. I think they're like really positive, and they create like strong morals and not just the person down the road. They don't just focus on the sport itself. My second point was the booster gloves. I'm really thankful for our booster gloves. They always provide new equipment, new jerseys, and even for like girls soccer games, they had the girl kids were big game that was. And availability of teachers. Every teacher that you go to will always be available after school, no matter what time, what you need, they're always going to be there for you.
So my first point was FRP. It's a great way to get an advancement on your college credits that can really get you down the road. The college credits, you have the availability of 60 college credits, which is equal to almost an associate's degree. My second point was the weight room after school. The weight room after school really opens up for everybody, and it really allowed like a community to come together and work on their goals and values. And my last point is the hall support. The hall support at CHS is great. It's all security guards that are welcoming and really help you, and they're also teachers that you know and love. So they're always there to help you.
My first point is our teacher support, whether it be for schoolwork or even for small issues. There's always a teacher that you can go to talk to about your problems, and they're always there, open to listen and talk to them. This year we also started having and kind of last day we started having pulse suites. Although most of the students don't enjoy them that much, these have actually been very beneficial, and we've also started making them fun, like by playing like all of our favorite songs and stuff. And I feel like it's also helped us minimize the amount of fights going on, which is beneficial. And then my last point is the pool card lounge, which makes it a lot more easier to just get away, have a place just to relax and take some time to yourself. And it also is helpful being able to see like some of your friends during your class studies, which you might not be able to see in your usual classroom.
So the Gold Card Lounge, if you're not aware, is where students are on high honor or honorable or high honor roll can leave their quiet study or their lunch. And it's that place out front of the main office where there's couches and high top tables. And they really have the freedom there. And that was another piece that was brought up by the kids, is the freedom that we allow them as young adults to be respectful to their space, and that we trust them to check into their quiet study and go down and use that space how we would like to use it.
My first point was volleyball, basketball, and unified basketball. So I feel like all the like coaches on like all the teams, even like the soccer and basketball, and like, all of them actually, like, they're all so much of help. Like even if they're like in school or like they're at like teach somewhere else, they give so much support like on the court, off the court, and yeah. And then my second point was Beard Days in December. We had like one, it was like ugly sweater day, pajama day, and I just like think like the ugly sweater day was really fun because like, everyone would say, oh, I won, or like they would like, go all out for like Beard Days. And then my third one was the snowball. We never had ours, but we didn't want to have one last year. And I think it was okay, just like we all had fun, we all like enjoyed the music, and everyone was going to the beach and just like being upset. Like, if you don't, if you're shy, like, everyone was there and just being.
And last year's snowball was the highest snowball attended in years. Like I said, I think we had close to 280 students and we had no issues. I mean, the kids just really had a great time and it was a huge success. We had some other students that we met with that weren't able to come. Julia Skidmore was supposed to be here, but she emailed me that she's sick and wasn't going to be able to make it. And then we had a couple other kids that were in on the meeting. And really, when I suggested to the kids, what do you guys want to talk about? The first come out of all of their mouths that they agreed with was our teachers are just the best. We're so lucky to have them. They're always supportive, and that really echoed in their comments. So I just want to make sure that our whole staff is aware that our students really appreciate all the work that they do day in and day out. And we know that sometimes it goes unnoticed, but the kids notice that, and that's what it's about.
Well, we certainly notice it here, so. But I want to thank you guys for coming here and participating in our meeting. It's really important that we hear your voice. It's great to hear that you all feel supportive and in different ways, and how kids can participate in different things. And, you know, sometimes doing the right thing gets you, you know, the rewards and gets you to be able to have the independence and the freedom to, you know, kind of be yourself. So really happy that you guys came here. You know, the board is here to support our students. And so anytime you have any kind of a suggestion or a thought about maybe something you'd like to see, we would welcome that in any way. So just keep us in mind. Thank you so much. Do you have any questions for us?
Any suggestions, Hannah?
Another snowball?
It is coming.
Okay. Very good. Well, thank you guys so much.
Thanks,
Anybody
guys.
else?
Great job.
Okay.
Good job.
Thank you. So you don't have to stay for the rest of the board meeting. Time though. Thank you. Okay. And now I'd like to turn the meeting over to Principal Jacqueline DeCero. I think most of you know that Jacqueline also coordinates our. Here's the handout that I also passed out to everyone. And Stacy, do you mind? There's some extras if anyone needs them. And you want the cook? Sure.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work. Oh.
Technical difficulties with the clicker. Okay.
Okay, so I'm here today to talk about a proposal or an idea about our population of our English as a second language students. As you can see, the number of students who are in our district has grown over the past 6 years. This chart is just for the past 6 years. We actually started sending all elementary email students to Harmony Hill in 2015, September 2015. And the reason why we did that is back in 2015, as you can see here in 2019, for elementary, we had 8 students. So if you think about 2015, 2016 is about the same number, but they were across the 3 schools, the 3 elementary schools. And so we needed an E&L teacher to be at Harmony for a little bit of the day, then travel to Lansing, be on Skype. And so we really looked at it and thought to ourselves, are we being efficient with our services? Does this make sense to have, we had probably about the same number in 2015 for, a person to be traveling. And we thought, and wouldn't it be nice for those students to have like peers with them in their classrooms at the school? So they would have a little bit of a community for them. So we thought that was what was in their best interest at that time in 2015. And that's what we decided to do. So Harmony Hill became our ENL hub for a while. So, and you can see as our numbers start to grow, 8, 13, the orange is how many ENL students were at Harmony Hill across the three those years. As you can see, over the past 3 years, our numbers have grown substantially. And so looking at those numbers and then talking to Mr. Perry and his teachers, we've had to make adjustments over the past few years. We looked at the students in 22, 23 here, where we went from 21 to 49 in 1 year. And that was pretty equal amongst from kindergarten up to 5th grade. And what Mr. Perry typically did was put all the ENL students in one of his sections. Because again, we want the students to have like peers with them. The ENL teacher could just be working with the one classroom teacher. So we thought that made sense. Once we got to up here in 49, this year, there were some classrooms at Harmony Hill that had sometimes 10, 12 ENL students in their one class. And I believe it was a third class at one time, it was almost 50%, even teetering on more ENL students in that class than English speakers. So Mark and I, we talked about it, I said, okay, why don't we how about the following year here? Mark said, what I'll do is we'll put them into 2 of the sections. So that not one teacher has so many, and that impacts the classroom. And we looked at it together and we said, okay, how are we going to divide them now? So what we did is we looked at the levels. So as I told you before, students are divided into 4 different levels. They can be beginners, emergent, transitional, or expanding. That's their level of their ability to read, speak, read, and write in English. So we decided, let's put the students who are beginners and emergents, the ones who are the most needy, 72 minutes a day, into one of the classroom sections, and then the ones who needs 36 minutes a day, we'll put in another classroom. And then again, that way we can look at the staff and really concentrate our resources and efforts in that way. So that's what we did, and it has worked. It was much better for the classrooms at Harmony Hill. And then this year there's 50, or last year 50. Now this year we're right around 60 at Harmony Hill. And the difference, though, in the past couple of years is where back in these years, while we chose Harmony Hill, is because when we looked, most of the students' home school was Harmony Hill. So out of this 8, Harmony Hill probably had 6, and then Van Skyke probably had 1, and Lansing had 1. It was very, very one-sided to Harmony Hill, and that's why we chose Harmony Hill to be their home school. But as we've grown now into these past 3 years, you can see that the number of students who their home school is, it has shifted to we're pretty much equal the 3 elementary schools. So that's where after last year, we made those changes, and then looking at how our numbers continue to grow, we said, do we need to look at keeping them all at Harmony Hill? Is it better? One of our reasons was we wanted them to have like peers, right? We wanted them to build a community. Well, if they go back to their home schools, they're going to have that in their home schools now, not only during their school time, but when they're out in their neighborhood and in their community, they're going to have people around them now. Right now, we're busing them to Harmony Hill if they're at Van Skyke or Avon Lansing as their home school. So again, now we're taking them from their neighborhood and bringing them up to Harmony Hill. So many of them, where if they stay at Lansing, they stay at Van Skyke, they're going to be able to have that community and those peers right in their community. So we started thinking about looking at our numbers, thinking about staffing. So that was another important piece. If we do this, what does staffing look like? Harmony Hill right now has 2 full-time ENL teachers. Middle school has 1, high school has 1. Actually, high school has 1.2. So we believe you can click it. So here is what it would look like. We broke down, so Avon Lansing, Harmony Hill by grade level with our current numbers. This is what it would look like for each grade level of each school. So you can see that there isn't a classroom group with grade level where it would impact Avon Lansing or Harmony Hill or Van Skyke so much that we need another section. Okay, we could absorb those into our current grade levels and our current numbers. So we said, okay, that's a good thing. What does it look like for the teaching staff? Okay, so take our E&L teachers, do one full-time, one stays at Harmony, one here stays here, the one at high school stays there, the extra one from Harmony Hill could go to Van Skyke or Abram Lansing, and then we need to just look at the one building and see what we could do there. We have some creative ideas we're thinking about, we could work at. Mark has a really good full-time dual language, full-time aide right now, has some experience back in our home countries teaching. So some things we are looking at, but so we could use our existing staff to get to 4 of the schools, and we would just be looking for that one. And what the minutes we need in that one, we're not sure yet. It would be based on how many kids and what their needs are. You can see Van Skyke would have the least amount with 11 based on current numbers. Those numbers are constantly changing though. The other thing that we would consider is, that our policy right now is if we have someone who is in our elementary schools through 4th grade, and then they move to one of the other schools, we allow them to choose. Do you want to stay in the school you're at that you've been in since 4th grade? Or do you want to go to bigger school for your final year of 5th grade? So we would extend that to the E&L students. So the 4th graders who are at Harmony now, which there are 12, we would say to them, you could stay in Harmony for this one last year, or you could go to your home school, which is what we do for all of our students. And I think that number's actually down to 10 now. Oh no. PJ? And if we were to move forward with this plan, other things we thought about was, obviously, the teachers at Abram Lansing and Van Skyke would need professional development. All of our professional development at this point has really been, concentrated on the E&L teachers at Harmony, the classroom teachers at Harmony. The past 2 summers, we've brought Arbor in. We've done day-long PD with the teachers at Harmony Hill, along with the E&L teachers. And we've had a great turnout. 10 to 12 teachers at Harmony have shown each summer for that. In the high school and the middle school. So we would need to do some PD for the teachers at Lansing's and at Van Skyke. And we would reach out to Arbor to do that. As well as Mark has a teacher, Meg Cherubino, who has had the E&L students for a number of years, who is really got a great toolkit in her back pocket on best practices on working with E&L students. Right now, she's doing a 6 or 8 month series once a month where she's said, I have this developed. I'd like to share with what I've seen has worked. And she's worked with anyone at Harmony Hill who wants to come to work with her after school. So I would probably reach out to Meg to see if she's willing to work with the Abram Lansing and Van Skyke students, as well as reach out to Arbor. And then thinking about the parents, how would we tell them? So the parents that are Abram Lansing and Van Skyke homeschool, they're used to right now having a bus come pick up their students, right, and bring them to school. And now they're going to be, like all the other students, having to transport themselves to school. And we want them to know way in advance that this is something new, that next September, you're going to be back at Abram Lansing or Van Skyke. So we have parent conferences, report card conferences coming up in March. So what I would propose that we did is at those report card conferences, we schedule a conference for each of those families. We get a translator at each of those report card conferences. We have it in writing, we put it in writing, explaining what we're going to do. And we have the translator talk about it with the E&L teacher there and the classroom teacher there. We put it in writing. We have the translator make sure they're reading it and that it's in their home language. Have the parents sign off on that they understand that in September, their child will be either at Van Skyke or Abram Lansing based on where their homeschool is.
So I have a couple questions. I think that, first of all, having this conversation certainly drives our DEI initiatives within our buildings and trying to support the diversity in each one of our elementary schools. I wonder if a survey or, some sort of a conversation with parents would be a good idea, just to kind of get a little bit of background from their perspective. I was looking at the information that you gave us, and it is kind of diverse in the languages, which would now go across 3 buildings. And so a student who might speak Chinese right now may not have another student in the building that speaks Chinese, where they do at Harmony Hill. So I just would be curious to hear the perspective of the parents to know if how that would impact their children and, their families. I don't know if you've considered or even had conversations already. Just curious to know what the parent side of this proposal would look like in trying to make sure that we are supporting them. Like you said, Harmony Hill has become kind of, the ideal for making sure that different cultures are being appreciated and making sure that, we are looking at all of our students equally. And so I do like the idea, like I said, I just wonder how, from the parent's perspective, they would feel it would impact their child.
So I think that if you look at the numbers, and I always get them broken, I think I've got it broken down somewhere. The biggest language right now is Portuguese and Spanish. So you're going to have a pretty equal swath of that going across the 3 elementary schools. You do have some singleton languages, Chinese being one of them. I believe there's one child at Harmony who's Chinese. We have 2 brothers who speak Japanese, they're the only ones. We have one who's Thai. So we do have some singletons, and so, again, I don't think that you're going to find that it's going to, I don't say not matter, but it's not going to be that big of an influence for those singleton languages.
Mhm.
And I think that the languages like Portuguese and Spanish, they're going to have their same community, they're going to have the community there because there's so many of them that are speaking these other languages. But we could certainly, absolutely, in the spring, though, again, if we are going to do it, I really think it's important that we do it when we would have the captive audience of the parents at the parent conferences. We do a spring picnic. That's held in April, the very beginning of April, because that's when we talk about the nicest thoughts of the parents, and we kind of do, show them some of the children's work and things like that. And I just worry if we wait till then, we don't get everyone at that picnic, and then trying to get the parents all for like a separate meeting, I think would be difficult. And I think if we waited to June, I feel like that's too late to let them know. But we can certainly do something.
I don't disagree. I just feel like I'm not a person who speaks another language, and I'm not in a country in a language that I don't speak. And so I don't know what that perspective would be. And, just to even have only one first grader who is an E&L student to feel isolated in their world because they are the only English language learners in their grade level.
Right.
So I guess I'm just curious as to like how that would impact. Of course, I'm sure Mr. Jackson would be interested in the budgetary.
I have a
piece.
whole pile of
Yeah.
questions.
So I'll let him speak to that, but, I just am curious to know, I don't want this to seem like it's being forced upon because we think it's a good idea if we don't have the other side of the perspective.
Right now, I would mention, our UPK students who are in all 3 elementary schools, we have ESL students in all 3 elementary schools that are in UPK.
Okay.
So the 3s and 4s, and each of the 3 buildings have students in them. They don't go all to Harmony Hill.
We can discuss a way to have some conversations with some parents.
Yes.
All right, so sort of to jump off what Margaret said, I guess my biggest immediate concern that I wrote down when we talked about this is if we haven't started having discussions, focus group, get an idea, are we going to run into charter school issues the second we say, oh, well, we're not going to bus your kid to school anymore. So now they're going to try to find a way that they can get that.
And so I got on the first slide to talk about the busing situation too. And that is a great convenience to that population, but it's not something that all of our elementary students are afforded. And I think Mr. Perry would attest to at this point when we have 60 students up there. Right now we have 3 buses that go to Harmony Hill. They start lining up at 2:30 in the hallway, so we're losing out on instructional time. When a student comes in who is in Advanced Guide or Avon Lansing, in order to get the busing, it starts at Elena, who then tells me I have to fill the paperwork out, and then I send it to Dina, and then Dina calls the bus company, and then the bus company will then call the family. It is, quite the paperwork trail and time that we do spend doing that. But it is something that I don't think that is a factor at Harmony Hill, is the number of buses the time they're arriving, the time they need to depart. So that is a factor as far as the busing goes.
There was a period of time this year, correct, that because of bus driver shortage,
Yes.
that we had families
We did.
taking multiple trips back. So just.
Yes, we had families, this year we've had, families, because of the busing, driver shortage, who told us they're not sending their kids until the bus comes. We've had the families tell us that they couldn't, and we had one family who would pick up 3 other students, drop them off at Harmony, and then go make another round, and then bring up the next set of kids. Waiting, I mean, there was nothing we could do. We were on with the bus company told us, we are trying, we are working on this. They just did not have the drivers at that time.
I guess that's part of my concern though, because when you have those parents who say, basically, I'm not gonna send my kid until the bus comes to get them. You know, we send 2 or 3 of those families to charter schools and we are budgetarily in the wrong direction real quick, and it can get a lot worse. So just from an implementation standpoint, I'd like to know that we're trying to do the background to find out from these families whether or not that's going to be an issue. If it is going to be an issue, do we look at implementing this more as kids come out of UPK and now they start going to their home schools, so they never get used to busing, versus some of the other families just sort of leave as is.
But if we did, I would just say, budgetary wise, if we were to do that, you would have students that next year at Van Skyke, at Avon Lansing, and still have your 60 at Harmony Hill.
I
So
understand.
you still need 2 teachers there. The 4 we have plus 2.
Understood. Believe me.
I mean, I think it's,
Running a whole bunch of numbers at the same time right now.
I think it's important to look at all the scenarios.
Do we know what the busing savings would be?
I don't know. I don't.
So we, we figured out the information on busing last year. This proposal almost made it to you last year. But we wanted to build in some more time, so I can look that up. Stacy, is the busing, eatable?
Yeah.
It's eatable, so,
So it's just, there's,
yeah.
like, I can't provide any real thought without a complete
Yeah, so we
proposal, and
can
there's a
get-
whole lot of moving
Yeah,
numbers.
no, this is good. This is why we're talking about it
The
in
cost,
January too.
the cost-
Even before the budget.
the cost is about 160,000. Aid is it's high, our transportation aid is high. It's like
Ballpark.
90%.
And room for ENL services, how are we looking at each of the schools for that?
So depending on the levels of the students, at elementary, then the maximum amount of time that we give the students is 72 minutes a day. 36 minutes for those students takes place in the classroom, 36 minutes takes outside the classroom. Jake, can you go back? On your one chart here, on the front, you can see that I put there how many would require the 72 minutes. So you would, at least, 6 or 7 in this grade level, you're probably going to take 3 or 4 out of the classroom. So it's going to probably need a space. The ENL teacher at each building would need a space similar to what reading teachers or AIS teachers need. So a space maybe with a shared space, but not in the classroom.
One thing added to the handout that was not shared originally, we do have it now, is the breakdown by grade level, pre and post. Just.
Any other questions?
Is there a possibility that taking into consideration, that we could take, if a specific family had an issue with moving, could we take it on a case-to-case basis and determine if it's viable to keep them where they are? Just for the ones who are already there, like, could we just, and I'm not saying a yes or no, like, if you have an issue, you can automatically stay, but maybe take it on a case-to-case basis.
I think we talked about the idea of looking at students we have students who are at Harmony Hill Elementary who have been there since kindergarten, right to 3rd grade now. Maybe do we look at them? But then we have probably 20 of them that this is their very first year at Harmony Hill.
Right.
So their ties to Harmony Hill aren't the same as the ones who've been there since kindergarten. So do we look at that? You know, look at ones that are brand new this year. I don't know, you know, that's something we've had. There's all sorts of, you know.
I mean, personally, I feel like the program should be what the program is, you know, so if we decide that we're gonna look at dispersing them throughout, then that should be the program. You know, it's hard to, it's not like we, like you said, give other parents choices to go to other buildings, understanding we're already providing services. I guess, you know, for me, I would rather look at it kind of like either we're changing the program or we're not changing the program. I do appreciate kiddos who have probably been there for, you know, several years and are immersed in Harmony Hill, and to disrupt that at a period of time where we just are not giving a choice. I think it is smart for us to look at those.
But I will just mention, any other child that's in our elementary school, they have to have been in our elementaries through to 4th grade, October 1st grade, in order to get that same thing, to stay there through 5th.
Right, but they didn't have a choice to go to Harmony Hill in the first place. We told them that that's where they were going. So, I mean, it's a little bit of a different situation in that we dictated that they were going there in the first place. I mean, I don't want to make grown-up problems kids' problems, you know what I mean? We were the ones that said, you're going to Harmony Hill. And they needed to, you know, do whatever we said at that point, so.
I think it's similar, I mean, we have other populations we've done that with too, and their schools. We have self-contained classrooms that were housed at Van Skyke, or now they're at Lansing's. We've done that. We've made those changes.
But in most cases, those kids would get transportation in any case.
They would get transportation
So-
case unless that's from school, then transportation isn't guaranteed for them either.
Just one piece, and I want to keep making sure we have all your questions, because that is why we're, you know, we wanted to have these conversations early. When we started talking about this, and it did come up in the needs assessment last year at Harmony Hill, is as the numbers increased, but not just the numbers, as the levels of behaviors increased and the impact on classroom instruction with so many ENL students, did get, you know, there was an impact, and it became increasingly, you know, difficult with all of the students. You know, I went into a classroom, and the teachers have done an amazing job, you know, where, you know, there are the translation of all these different languages going on at the same time, and you can hear it, and sometimes it is detracted a bit. I wanted to let you know that we're looking at other things instructionally too, to try to, wherever the students are, alleviate that. So Jacqueline is going to visit Taconic Hills. They have, you know, microphones with, that the teachers can wear, that the students can wear headphones on as the teacher is talking. It translates into their native languages. And there's a number of things like that. So we're looking at ways to try to, you know, assist some of those areas wherever the students may be. But I did want to tell you that this did come up in a couple different needs assessments as the numbers really increased. I think Mr. Perry now has a number of aides in the classrooms too, to try to support the ENL students too. So it came up through the needs assessment. And maybe it was 2 years in a row, last year, the year before, I just started, you know, really looking at it in depth to bring it to you this year. So it did come through that process.
And I think what Peg said, if you look at the numbers, I did break them down that way. We have more students, ENL students, who are at the beginner, the newcomer, the beginner, and emergent levels than we do at transitioning and expanding levels. So we have more students who need 72 minutes a day, meaning that they are basically brand new and don't understand and can't speak very much English at all, than we do ones that are in that transitioning and, you know, able to moving forward. So their needs are pretty substantial in the classroom and a given time.
So what are some of the other questions? Just so, I mean, we did, we heard parent input and point well taken. We can get some firmer firmer numbers if we need for transportation?
Along the lines of what you just said, Ms. O'Shea, in regards to like going to different school districts, Cohoes can't be an anomaly in this realm. Like that, we're seeing this data that's driving these trends up and up and up. Can we learn through other districts who may be a year or three ahead of us? What are they doing and how are they pulling resources and shared between buildings? And can we take a model or a template and look at it that way? And how do they solve these problems? Because I think we're all lucky that we have this kind of diversity in our classrooms. Our students are very lucky to be able to day-to-day have this. It's our job to figure out how to make it work efficiently and effectively, but I think we can't be the only ones facing this problem.
Williamsburg has, students at both their schools. Troy has them at various elementary schools. Albany, of course, has their newcomer school itself, so they all go there. I know one school district, I can't think of the name off the top of my head, I was speaking to one of them on a meeting I was with, and they actually have the ENL teacher say at Harmony Hill, and the kids that are at Van Skyke, and they are bused to that school, get their 72 minutes and are bused back. That's how they do it.
South Colony had the model like we do now. They have now since, because of the increasing numbers, been moving back to the homeschool model. So we have been having discussions. We will continue, and in the long run, we need to do what's best for our students. The one plus that I think Mr. Perry had been talking about, and Mr. Perry, you have the most conversations with the families and all of that. You brought up that the friendships, they then don't necessarily have those friendships in their neighborhood school zone, and that's something that you talked about. When the students are bused and they live in another homeschool.
Just seems so they go home and they're strangers, like they go and play. Kids, they go to school, so that's a factor. They don't play in equipment, Lansing or Van Skyke, and play ball with kids in soccer or whatever they have to do. They build friendships in our building because there's so many, like Jack had said 2 years ago, we had two classrooms with 13 kids, we had a kindergarten with 13 and third grade with 13 kids. And the class sizes were 20. It was 7, not ENLs. That's why we made the change to split the two classrooms. They have their friendships now, but they go home. They leave their friendship at school. And that strengthens their around, which is a work.
So we can work together with Jacqueline and you to figure out the best vehicle to get have parent conversations. And
one thing that would be very comforting for the parents is we've built a staff of Harmony where staff would be one of my full-time go to Lansing, and that'd be comforting because that's not a new, that's not a new face, but it's a city. We also have part-time aides that we split them up before, part-time aides that are pretty darn good at translating, running around translating. You have to constantly translate. We have them as well. And Mrs. Shirley does a phenomenal job with the other classroom teachers and our building resources. She can package that up. It's a toolbox, like Jacqueline said. Toolbox, so she can go and she can train against Skype, train Lansing teachers right away. So I've sat in a whole discussion with our teachers in our building. It's really great stuff because she takes things and she takes their needs. Okay, how do we fill out a report? We don't think about these things. Filling out an ENL report is significantly different than not. It's almost like it's almost an special ed report. You say, okay, with assistance, this is what we're doing. Yeah. So, quite a bit. We built a transport PD.
And I think, talking about the needs assessment and budget time, that is something, we're trying to factor into our budgets, like I put in my budget. If the ENLs are coming back, we are going to need, some of these resources in our classrooms. I think that, well, I don't know if you saw the email that we have Magic School now. And I think that we just rolled that out to the staff. And I think that's going to be a great resource for everyone. Easy, it seems to be very user-friendly. It's something that one of our ENL teachers brought back to us at one of the PDs that we had scheduled from. The Arbor had brought back, this is a suggestion. So we're finally, that email went out this week, so all staff are able to use it. Because even when they're not the ENL teacher, middle school, high school teachers have them in their classroom and they're saying, how do I help them? How can I accommodate what I'm doing when I don't have Carrie Bottenfield with them? What do I do? So hopefully this Magic School is going to help everyone.
I mean, I usually lean on administrators because you guys are in the school, obviously put a lot of thought into this. So my first reaction is yes. Whatever you guys have thought a lot about this is figure it out. And then what Margaret has said, budgetarily, I don't know how that gets involved, but like even when ENL classes are heavier on kids that don't speak English, it's like, that's not fair either for the 6 kids that speak, our language. But I don't know what the answers are, but maybe that's an anomaly some years where you have 10 kids, they're half and half. But it's obviously an issue that you guys are working on and something's got to be changed.
Again, high school, they have them for one period a day. And they contact the ENL teachers and myself with, some struggles and what do we do? You have elementary teachers who are with them for 6.5 hours a day. And they're getting Kim Angus or bourgeois for 72 minutes, sometimes 36 minutes in, 36 out. The rest of the day, those classroom teachers are on their own with these students. And so you can imagine in a classroom that has 13 speaking 6 different languages and your 7 English speakers are sitting there too, it creates, quite a balancing act and being flexible for the teachers. And that's another point I just want to make out is if we can, thinking about timeline, the teachers at Avon Lansing and Van Skyke, they're hearing, rumblings that this is a real possibility that this could happen. And they're saying, all right, it's going to happen. We want to know. We want to start preparing. We want to start figuring out what am I going to need and what is it going to look like. So I think that's, yes, students first, what's best for them, talking to the parents, but then also considering our classroom teachers, who this is also going to impact, and they want to be ready and prepared as well in September. And the sooner we can get that, let them know if this is going to happen, it's the better for them. They're going to look for PD that's happening right now at Arbor and over the summer and signing for those things.
I think that it makes a lot of sense based on our numbers right now. My concern is the transition of the students. And also, if the numbers fluctuate back down, then any of those students having to then transfer into one school again. So those would be my big concerns. But based on our numbers right now, and I know that it keeps going up and I understand.
Trend line is
I know, but you never know at what point it trend back down. We would have to possibly think of a plan if that were to happen. But my biggest concern is the transition of those kids from what their norm is right now. That's all. So it makes sense though. I understand what you're saying. I do agree with the data.
There's a pretty good percentage of our kids too, that are kids that have already been to multiple states. I mean, if they're not right from their home country, they've been to multiple states. So to see how resilient they are already, to sit in the classroom and build friendships when they don't even hardly speak English, it's really great to see. I mean, my other kids are really accepting of it. It'd be nice to see that happening in the other buildings too.
I was thinking that.
Culture, because now when we talk about holidays, it's not just our holidays, it's everybody else's holidays. It's really rich discussions.
I was thinking that same thing too. Now, a lot of the kids in Lansing's and Van Skyke don't get that exposure until they're in the middle school. And my kids having been in Harmony Hill, I know that they've always been just much more accepting of people's differences. And I wonder how much of that is exposure. So,
So we will do a follow-up at our next board meeting. And if there's other questions, just please send them my way, and I'll work with Jacqueline and Mark and then Stacy.
Thank you for coming and bringing this to us today. I mean, the conversation is a good conversation to have, and to be continued. No, thank you.
So I just want to give an update based on our culture and climate update based on our conversation at the last board meeting, and then, to be continued. So on tonight's agenda, first of all, is the contract with Trauma Skilled Schools. And then the plan for that is to start training in late January, probably early February for this place.
Be February. I'll contact John tomorrow. After we have the vote tonight.
And then I mentioned mediation matters and conflict resolution at the middle school, and that initial meeting was held. The next step is a meeting with the building leadership team, as well as with the counseling staff, a joint meeting. Rachel will be there along with Deanna and Jill. Jill will be the lead on the, as dean on the conflict resolution. So the beginning steps are really trying to ask questions to find out where some of the issues may be, how the teachers feel, how the students feel, how the parents feel, and then really building a program that is specific based on that to the middle school needs. We will have Rachel and Mediation Matters, or Rachel and Jill, after some of the initial meetings, give a presentation. But very, very positive first meeting, really well designed and tailored to what we need. And again, that was through a grant that we received, legislative grant. Laura, Heather, and I have a meeting with a Yonder Pouch vendor on Friday. And then on Tuesday, Laura and Heather will be visiting Troy High School to see how they implement it. I just wanted to be in on the initial meeting with the Yonder Pouch myself too, to just get some more information. Laura and Heather have received a lot of materials and have some budget information too as we go through the process. Drew Rentz and an additional school safety officer who is on tonight's agenda are able to start January 27th for the 4 to 9 shift at the high school, which is needed. That will provide additional coverage. We currently have coverage at our games, but the big missing piece is that after school time. Tim and I have a meeting on Friday with our communication specialist and also with the Capital Region BOCES Public Relations and Communications Program Manager. And that's to discuss positive district communication, branding, as well as crisis incident communication, kind of review some of our previous communications. We have some really good ideas on some video branding as well, to really talk about, our beliefs, our commitments, and really bring it down to student level on the videos. Laura, Tim, and I reached out to Ben Williams of the Connect Center to set up a meeting regarding potential collaboration on alternative learning models, trying to really think outside of the box of Connect Center, a lot of hands-on STEAM type of activities is a place that could potentially be a collaborator in some ventures. So we'll keep you updated on that. And the middle and high school teams are exploring models, as we had discussed, and we'll be prepared to talk at the budget committee too. But as we discussed, we used the BOCES model in the past and that was not successful. We had an ALP model, Holy Trinity. I'm really trying to see what will work best, both in terms of academics and behavior needs. And then I know there have been some conversations or some questions. I think at the February meeting, I'd like to begin the conversation again and get input about, is it time to, revisit the school resource officer model? And so at the February meeting, I will have some more information about that as well. Before I go in to talk about a little bit about the high school this weekend, any other items?
So I just had a couple of questions. So the intent and to collaborate with the Connect Center would not be in place of what students are currently getting through their tutoring model? Or it would support that? I'm not really sure,
Yeah.
understanding what the goal is.
So this is just an initial discussion to see if there are some opportunities working together with the Connect Center that we can look at some alternate learning, types of programs. Our tutoring center is 3 hours, AM and PM session for students who are on long-term suspensions or for students who have, medical notes. So that's not an alternative learning program. We need to explore some more alternative learning type programs that actually would be a in-school situation, not just for when students are suspended or on medical. So for example, as you just said with the NL, we're reaching out to different schools that have models. Amsterdam has a model, Troy has a model, so to begin to explore models. Also to have some conversations with Ben to see if there's potential partnerships in terms of Connect Center during the day. Not sure, just exploring, trying to think broader. I know one of the things when we did the Holy Trinity program was, leasing a building and all that entailed in terms of, the vote to, at the budget time to lease the building. Is there a collaborative partnership that we could form instead? And we did this in an after-school program years ago. I don't know if you remember, we had after-school programming through Boys and Girls Club, Russell, Sage, and some others. So kind of looking at that model, but could it be during the day in collaboration with our teachers and with some of the opportunities they have in terms of technology and some other areas? More to follow. Just we'll let you know
So
throughout the process.
you don't have a meeting set up yet, but you have reached out to.
We have reached out, we have done some back and forth emails. But before we have our next board meeting, I will be able to provide you an update on the work to date. And then at our budget committee, we have to have conversations around, what this could potentially look like. And we'll fill you in on the 20th as well, for one of our next board meetings.
Okay. My other question was on the district communication kind of protocols. When, you were talking about, incident response. And I was wondering, with as many new people as we have down in central office, if this could be a part of the onboarding process, and also maybe it's a good time for us to look at our onboarding process to make sure that training is happening and if things are not slipping through the cracks, so to speak, to make sure that everybody knows, or even, we've discussed sometimes about, cross-training and roles and making sure that there's that support if somebody's out and, forwarding your messages if you're not here, things like that. We've had those discussions in little pieces and parts, but we've also talked about, how important it is to retain our employees. And so I just Don't know if you guys have had a conversation about an onboarding process necessarily, or what that looks like. I know that each of the positions down there are singleton positions, but also it is a heavy lift for us, not necessarily for me, but for you, when you have to replace and retrain. And so, I just wonder if it's a good time for us to have those conversations. We've looked at our HR process, we've looked at our retention process over the course of the last couple of years. But with as many new people as we do have, I just wonder if it's not a good time for us to review that.
Yeah, so I think it's always a good time each time, right, to review our onboarding process. In the recent past, Tim and I have had conversations with our new assistants. Actually, you're newer than yours is, but in terms of what happens when any of us are out, and also what happens if one of them is out, because their backup in terms of crisis communication, if Ashley or Krista's not there, is Tara. And, we have worked through that process. We've talked about, making sure we have some, joint meetings with everyone together in central office too. But always something to continue to look at with onboarding. We do now, for all of our new staff who come on board, they go through vector training at central office if they are, CSEA, and they are CTA. It depends. Sometimes they start, this is mid-year, because mid-year
But
was.
that's like compliance training. That's not like on the job.
Right.
How do I do my job?
But as part of that, there's other information that they receive, and then they go on to the building to receive the safety protocols. One area that we had realized a couple of years ago we were lacking in was when people started mid-year. So we continue to refine and enhance that. We'll continue to look at that process.
Okay, would that be something that you would be able to just update us after you guys are able to have a conversation to feel like if there's a need there?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
So then just a few other things. As you know, we did have a break-in and vandalism at the high school, working very closely with the police department. Really thank them for their collaboration as always. Messages have gone out regarding ensuring all windows are secure. Our maintenance team has checked all of the windows and reported back today. So we are very solid in that area. I did want to give you an update on the indoor track discussion as well. I had a discussion with Laura and Jeff have not been brought the safety officers into the discussion yet. I will later this week. But the initial thoughts are, now that we have evening safety officer to open the track from 8 to 9 after practice is done. That's the hour the safety officer is still there. Another potential time, our students start arriving for road check at 7:20 and start arriving for breakfast 7:30. So another potential time would be 6 to 7 or potentially 6 to 7:20. We don't have a safety officer there at that time. If we were to proceed at that time, we would want to have a safety officer there from 6 to 7. Interested community members would complete an application online, then set up an appointment to get a pass, because we would want to run their license through Raptor and check the protocols. That's where we want to now bring the safety officers in and have that conversation with them. And wanted to just put those timeframes out, see your thoughts about supporting a safety officer from 6 to 7. And I think this is something that, we could have pretty quick turnaround to start. I'd like to have our new safety officer trained next week, but we would be able to set up protocols and communicate and begin in early February. So just wanted to open that up for discussion.
So I think it's important to share with our community all of the things that they help support us, and the track, Marianne had even mentioned, not even just the indoor track, but thinking about setting some pieces up for the outdoor track as well. I know that's a little bit down the road and we're kind of prioritizing indoor track at the moment. So I just feel like if you're going to have that conversation to have it holistically so that we can, try to make sure we can mitigate all the issues and have a communication plan that says this is how and when you can access. I'm wondering if there will be a cost involved. In the past, anybody who went and got a pass to be able to go on the track basically had to pay for their pass. So I don't know if there was discussion about that or if there would be any kind of obligation to a community member who applied.
So I think
support that. I just bringing it up because it was part of the protocol in the past.
So I think it was a minimal charge at the time, like $10 or $20.
I was gonna say, I do know pre-COVID, I had a pass for the track and it was $10.
$10.
Yeah.
So that would be really a discussion here. I mean, we could especially, our plan is to have the safety officers there, until 9. So that's that. If we were going to open it up in the morning, that could potentially offset, I don't know if it would be with inflation now 20, but that's a discussion that we can have here.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
If you guys could just kind of get an idea of what that might look like. I mean, if it's $10 or $15 or 20, whatever that is, I just don't want to lose track of, again, those communication pieces.
Yeah, I would say it would be nominal, though. I know that there were bigger amounts at one point in time tossed around, but I don't want to have it be cost prohibitive in any way. I know that this would be some, time to sign up. They would have a pass. We'll talk a little bit more and then give you a recommendation for that. Questions, thoughts?
I think having 1 hour at night, I don't know if we need to add it in the morning to make it special. I mean, I understand people work out early and late, but having designated 1 hour where it's simple and there is a pass and whatever.
So I think
that makes total sense.
They're you would see very different populations of people early in the morning versus, in the evening. I know personally, some people who did use it very early in the morning. Some of our retirees and people who are early risers, and I don't think it's a bad thing for us to, have an hour in the morning if it's not impacting the school day. Certainly.
That's my only concern is if that impacts the amount of security staff we have during the day. That we won't understand the trade-off.
So that's where the conversation with the safety officers would be. Now that we have additional, are we able to have the 6 to 7 without, impacting? So that would be part of the conversation. Both we do our scheduling internally now. Both Tony and Matt do the scheduling. So that's something I envision them reaching out to say, this would be additional. We would not want this to take away from any time. Are you willing?
So just a thought as we're having this conversation, and it's not something really that we have talked about or brought up before. I mean, we now have spoken about our safety officers. We're growing our team of safety officers. Are we at a point where we need somebody to kind of be the point person as, either we have head custodians. Do we need someone that can answer for, some of these things? And it's great to invite people in. But, we're getting one perspective or, where is the responsibility? And like I said, I know that we haven't had this conversation, but we have certainly grown our team this year. And, at what point do we look at, we've got someone who's doing scheduling, somebody who's a member of our safety committee,
Who
somebody.
do they report to? Yeah, who do they report
I
to?
feel like they're,
So
it's,
currently, they
Yeah.
report to, the high school reports to Laura,
Okay,
and the middle school report to Kyle. When, it is a building that's going to be using, say, the high school for the elementary play, the principal actually would call up, Matt or Tony to do the scheduling. I think this ties into the discussion on the 20th too, about school resource officer. And, if we start looking down that road and proceed with that, because that would be one way to then, pull and tie things together. And if not, then, what are some of those? Do we have, if you said a lead? I really do think that right now, so Drew used to take the lead and then from afar. Right now, really, I would say both Matt and Tony are our leads. Matt schedules the day-to-day. Tony schedules the basketball, the other types of events. They're a really solid team. They reach out to the others. I know that they've had TCIS training through Rachel, but I would say they're both right now. They're the two leads, and they report primarily to Laura. Laura has meetings when meetings are needed. It's Laura, Jeff, and Heather. We have been talking about making sure we have all of them aligned. We do have now campus safety monitors are a little different, but have them all together a few times a year to talk as part of safety committees as well.
It points to this discussion though, like who do you go to when you need a risk assessment? So that morning hour, it's not as easy as it was 10 years ago. Like, what does that look like? And we have quite a bit of experience on our team, but who is that go to who takes that liability and say, all right, here's the risk?
So all of our buildings have the building level emergency response plans, and they also have those roles, those roles identified in those plans as well. But definitely part of the model discussion going forward after the 20th, which way are we, what do we want to go?
I feel like part of the reason bringing it up is that, not only are we growing our team, but we're asking more of them,
Right.
and they are, professionals in their own right, you know what I mean? Retired police officers and corrections officers, and they definitely have the experience, but at what point is it that we're taking advantage of that knowledge and experience? I don't know. And I'm not saying that that's what we're doing or suggesting that that's what we're doing. I just worry that if we continue down this path, that we might need to have someone be the source, and have that discussion. So when we discuss the safety officer piece, resource officer, whatever the case is, I think it's important for us to just even think about that a little bit more.
Because in many schools, the SRO is the lead, and then it flows from there. So that will be part of the discussion. I do want to let you know, so several years ago, facilities oversaw security and safety and security in the buildings. But based on the feedback of the principals, that's why we did move it specifically to the principals, because that makes, that makes the most sense there. But part of the continued discussion.
I just have a question too. We are appointing a new safety officer, but have we reappointed Drew?
Drew's never been not appointed, unappointed. Drew is still on our list and was there for.
He hasn't worked for us for a long time.
He He was doing the scheduling up until this year,
Okay,
and he did fill in on certain things when needed, certain events.
so he's still on the payroll and we don't have to reappoint him.
We don't have to reappoint him. Because he was still on call if needed. Okay, anything else? Stacy?
So on the agenda is the preliminary revenue, the executive run, and the property tax calculation. That'll be part of February presentation, but I'll just give a high-level update today. So the property tax cap, a key factor is the allowable levy growth factor, and that is going to be 2% for this year. That does not mean that the levy will grow 2%. It just means that it's a key factor in the calculation, and that number happens to be 2%. So I'll go over the multi-step calculation the next time we meet in February, and I'll give you what the ending result is. But that's a key factor, so just sharing that out. We have a meeting with the city in the beginning of February, so it's important to talk about pilots because that's part of the calculation, just so we have the most up-to-date figure that we possibly can have. So that's a key meeting that needs to happen and is factored into the final calculation. For the executive run, that was released on the 21st. It's a preliminary run released by the governor. We are looking at an overall increase of 1.72%. The growth is in foundation aid and the expense-driven aids, preliminary, for the most part, BOCES, and our special programs, tuition, our excess costs, both private and public placements, and transportation. So those are the three expense aid categories that we've seen growth in. Building aid, there's a decrease. That's as our debt is retiring. Once we have a new borrowing of long-term debt, we had 2 short-term bans this past year. So once we have the long-term, and then we have substantial completion with our projects and we're able to submit the final cost reports for those projects, then the aid will grow back. So this is a temporary dip in the building aid, and then once we get through the timeline with the project, it'll go back up.
So can I ask, what is the public access high cost aid that with the pretty significant increase there?
So those are
That's
the BOCES. Yeah, those are the BOCES placements.
Okay.
So we're given aid based off of, there's a cap for tuition. So anything over that cap, we're aided for that. So that's placements in BOCES. So it's based off of our actual costs, and related costs are part of that as well, related services. And then the private placements would be students that are placed in private, and you'll see contracts for those individual contracts. So the least restrictive environment is home first, home district first, then BOCES, and last resort is the private placements. I was asked to give, does anybody have any questions about the state aid run? It's preliminary. I think Assemblymember McDonald is scheduled to be with us next time we meet.
Isn't it March?
March, okay. So not the next time we meet?
March.
So March,
The first March meeting.
but I'll go over in more detail the line item in February. I was asked to give an update on the Johnson-Manson clock. Ooh, it's a tongue twister. We were contacted by Ray LeMay, who's the director of the public library here in Cohoes, regarding the clock. The clock is more than 150 years old. It is a substantial piece of furniture, I'm going to call it. It's pretty big. We own the clock. It was loaned to the city back in 1988 by public vote. So it's been housed in the old library location, and that location is going to be sold. So the city contacted us and they asked us if we would please take that back. So we contacted the clerk of the works, Joe Netto, to oversee this project because it is a pretty, it's a specialized move, the clock. So it's going to be two different vendors that work on this move. The first is Waterford Clock Company. So they're gonna disassemble the pieces, the internal workings of the clock, and then Clark Moving Company is going to actually physically move the clock. It will actually be located here in the library. So the next time we meet, it should be here. It's scheduled for a move the end of this month. So certainly by February 12th, we should have it here in the middle school.
Do you think that it will ding when we're going to run?
I hope not.
Can you talk to us about expenses?
Yeah, so for the dismantle, it's $500. And for the actual physical move, it's $1,100. We reached out to 3 different moving companies. This wasn't the lowest, but it was the middle. And also Waterford Clock Company has worked with this mover before and was able to give a positive reference.
So not a huge impact on our budget.
Certainly not. No.
Certainly can be absorbed within what we currently have.
Absolutely.
Good.
Plus, it's timeless.
Okay, thanks, Superintendent. Everybody's got jokes today. BJ, have one? Okay.
Any questions on budget, executive budget or tax cap?
Right here.
Nope.
No.
No.
Well, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
And then upcoming events, curriculum night at Cohoes High School. Last year, we promised that the curriculum guide would be done for curriculum night. It's done, the scan's gone out, they have the guide. Quarter 2 ending, no school on Lunar New Year, 12 months CSEA and Cohoes principals report. And then our facilities committee meeting is February 5th.
Great, thank you.
And our budget committee meetings, we didn't make the slide, February 7th and January 3rd.
Snyder is very excited to be joining the budget committee.
And I'm looking forward, we all are, to spending almost 6 full days with you.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, does the board have any items on tonight's agenda that they would like to discuss? Does the community have any items on tonight's agenda that they would like to discuss? Okay. Can I get a motion that the Board of Education adopts the following resolutions of the January 22nd, 2025 agenda, 6A through F, 7A through G, and 9A.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Mrs. Geller?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mrs. Gendron?
Yes.
Mrs. Paradis is excused. Mr. Droz?
Yes.
And Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
Okay, are there comments from the board on anything else not related to the agenda?
I would like to say thank you to all the administrators and Cohoes High School staff, CSA employees, everyone who came in on a holiday to clean up after some very irresponsible behavior.
Absolutely.
I second that. As well as the Cohoes police for assisting.
Probably not their idea of having a day. Yes, thank you very much for that. Are there any comments from the audience on anything related to the agenda? Okay, we don't have any policy review. Dates of future meetings, February 12th and March 5th, right here at the Cohoes Middle School Library at 6 p.m. Can I get a motion to enter into exec session at 7:23 p.m. to discuss matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person, corporation, and to discuss the superintendent's evaluation, and to discuss CSEA negotiations?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Mrs. Geller,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder,
Yes.
Mrs. Gendron,
Yes.
Curtis is excused, Mr. Droz,
Yes.
and Mr. Jackson.
Yes.
Thank you all for coming. We do not plan on returning, so have yourself a good evening. See you next time.